I've got a 99 CRV here with the B20 non-VTEC motor in it, and it has a misfire. Now, somebody's already done spark plugs and wires, and it still has a multiple cylinder misfire. So what is it? It's valve lash. Guys, these engines need their valves lashed really every 30,000 miles. The manual says every 100,000 miles, but to get a smooth running B20 non-VTEC, you need to lash these valves more frequently than that. I say about 30,000 miles. You can maybe go a little longer. This one didn't have its first valve lash, to my knowledge, until I did it at 130-some thousand miles, and it was running rough then. Now it's running rough again at about 180,000 miles, so it's time for another valve lash. So how does the valve lash cause a misfire? Well, over time, it's usually the exhaust side. These exhaust valves tighten up is what it's called. They will tighten up, and this one actually had tight exhaust valves on cylinder number 1, and that hangs the valve open a little bit, which kind of interferes with the combustion cycle, and that is what gives you that rough idle and misfire. It drives fine, it has plenty of power, but it's idling a little rough because the lash was too tight. When I had this off of lobe here, I couldn't even get a feeler gauge in there. It was still pushing down on the valve spring a little bit, and that is pretty common with these. That just kind of happens over time, which is why I say they require valve lash adjustments pretty frequently. Guys, lashing valves is super easy. You can do it at home. It's a 12 millimeter, a flathead, and then I really recommend a torque wrench. You don't need one. I've done it without it in the past, but we're torquing down all these locking nuts to spec because it is an internal engine component. It is kind of important they stay tight. However, I've done it without a torque wrench in the past. Just make sure they're all snug and even. Use common sense. These 12 millimeter locking nuts, they're small, but they need to be snug. So proceed with caution. If you're not comfortable, buy a torque wrench or borrow one that goes low enough to 14 foot-pounds. It needs to be accurate at 14 foot-pounds. That's about 168 inch-pounds. I'm going to 170 inch-pounds here because you really don't want these coming loose and falling off inside the engine. Get yourself a good set of feeler gauges. Thickness gauges is what they're called. You're going to need 4 thousandths to 8 thousandths. That's all you need. The exhaust spec is 6 thousandths to 8 thousandths clearance. The intake spec is 4 thousandths to 6 thousandths clearance. This is really an hour job. This is an hour job and a valve cover. That's all this should be. It's not that difficult. You get pull your driver front wheel off, and then you can get to the 19 millimeter crank bolt. You see I've just got a long ratchet on there to bar the engine over. And you can do this at home. You can do this at home. It looks daunting. It looks like something you wouldn't want to tackle yourself. But trust me, you can do this at home. You have to let the car sit, though. This car sat for 5 hours before I started working on it. It's really better to let it sit overnight. They have to be stone cold on the motor. When the engine heats up, all the metal components inside expand a set amount. And that is why we lash valves. Ideally, when the engine is up to operating temperature, there is no valve lash here, and you have a good running, quiet valve train. But that's impossible. There's going to be mechanical errors, there's going to be differences all over the place, so we have to set a little bit of valve lash, which is essentially just play in the rocker arm. Here you can see, if I move this rocker arm, let me turn the light on here. If I move this rocker arm, you can hear it. That's how it should be when it's off lobe. You see the cam lobe kind of looks like an egg. When the peak of the egg or the lobe is not pressing down on the valve spring on the rocker, these should rock. They should be free floating. That is your lash adjustment there. Now, when you're on lobe, that means the cam lobe is pressing down on the rocker, on the spring, then there should be no play. You see, like these ones here. But you set valve lash off lobe, and it should be set. In this case, I have it set to 6 thousandths. I'll go down the line. I'll show you guys. This is what perfect valve lash looks like on an exhaust cam on a B20. You see we got a 6 thousandths feeler gauge here, and we got a 7 thousandths feeler gauge here. 6 thousandths slips right in. Slips right in. Feels like you're dragging it across a strong magnet. Right in. And then we'll go to the 7 thousandths, and it's no-go. It's not going in any of these. So we are perfect at a 6 thousandths clearance, probably maybe 6.5 thousandths in order to get this in there, but we're between 6 and 7 thousandths of an inch clearance there. I can even spin the motor over and do these other cylinders 2 and 4, but cylinders 1 and 3, you just saw, we're perfect in spec. Here, I'll spin the motor over, show you what I do. Come over here. It's very simple, guys. You can do this with all the other wheels on the ground and just take this wheel off. You could do this with the wheel on and just turn the wheel all the way to the left if you really want. But I'll spin the motor over. We got cylinder 2, off lobe. You can see again, we got our 6, slips right in there. Got our 7, no go. It's not going in there. There you go. Number 4 is off lobe. There's number 4, exhaust cam, 6 thou, feeler gauge, slips right in there. You can wipe the oil off of it. Guys, these should be clean. You're working inside of an engine. Make sure your tools are fairly clean. Good idea to do an oil change right after this. 6 thousandths. Hear how it sounds? We're slipping it between the cam lobe and the actual rocker. Now 7 thousandths. It will not go in there. Don't force it. It doesn't go in there. 6 thousandths slips right in there. That is what your valve lash should look like on the exhaust side. Now I'm going to set the camera up right here and let you guys watch me lash the intake. All right, step 1, we're going to go in with a 12 millimeter. I'm going to break all these locking nuts loose. All right, all our locking nuts are broke loose now. So now we can observe what we have off lobe here. Number 3 is off lobe, meaning the cam lobe is not pushing down on the rocker and it is free. So we're going to lash these ones. Spec on the intake side on a B29 VTEC is 4 to 6 thousandths. So let me pull out some new feeler gauges here. So go ahead, pull out 4 thou feeler gauge and a 5 thousandths feeler gauge. Put all our other gauges away. These are called thickness gauges, feeler gauges, interchangeable terminology there. You might go into a parts store and ask for a thickness gauge. Make sure your feeler gauges are clean. A little oil on there is fine, but you really want to hit these with some parts cleaner because you are slipping it between the cam and the rocker. Let's just get these guys really clean. Don't want to introduce any type of particulate into that spot. We'll go in with the 4. The 4 should go right in. And it does. 4 goes right in there between the camshaft and the rocker. 5 actually goes in there as well, so we're going to tighten this one up. 5 goes in there real easy on that one. Get your flathead, tighten it up, go a quarter turn. That feels like 0 lash at a quarter turn, so we'll go like an 1/8 of a turn. 5 is not fitting underneath either of them. Go back to 4. 4 fits under there, nice. Feels like you're dragging it across a magnet. Like if there was a magnet here and this was magnetic, it would stick and drag. That's how it should feel. See, we're not going into this one here. Pardon the camera. See, we're not going into this one here. So I'll go ahead and loosen that a little bit until we get 4 to slip in there. Feels loose. We can tighten it up. 4 thousandths goes in there. Get our 5 thousandths. 5 thousandths does not fit in there. Go back and check the other side. Yep, 5 thou does not fit in there. While the 4 thousandths slides right in there. Slides right on in there. It's actually a little tight. There we go. It slides right in there. Don't force it. Should feel a little tight. But the 4 thousandths goes right in there. Look at that. All right. Open end box wrench and your flathead screwdriver. Using the flathead screwdriver in the center portion of the valve stem, or I guess the rocker arm in this case. Keep it from turning as best of your abilities. Keep the center from turning as best you can. So put a little left load on it while you tighten up the locking nut. So I like to get these snug with this method. And you can go back. You can tighten these up with your socket and they shouldn't move. Or because I have it, I will be using my torque wrench set to 170 inch-pounds. Okay. Now, after you tighten it down, sometimes you can inadvertently adjust the lash by tightening the lock nut down. We're going to make sure that didn't happen. The 4000 slips right under there, perfect. Let me see if you can see that. Yeah, the 4000 slips under there perfectly. 4000 slips under that one. We'll switch to our 5000 gauge. 5000 does not fit, guys. 5000 does not fit. That is a perfectly lashed intake cam right there. That is how you do it. When you're done with all these, go through, double check your torque on all of them, double check your lash on all of them, and then you are done lashing the valves on the B20 non-VTEC. It's as easy as that. Anybody could do it. Really should be done every 30,000 miles. It really makes for a smoother running engine. I can always hear, I've done enough of this, that I can hear when this needs a valve lash. It sounds a little rough at the exhaust and it idles a little rough. It'll throw a code for multiple misfire, maybe a cylinder 1 or 2, but it's always the valve lash with these old Hondas. Always, always, always. Nobody ever does this adjustment. You gotta lash the valves in these Hondas. I'll get through with this. I'll finish this up. We'll throw the valve cover back on and it'll run good as new. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoy this type of video, please consider subscribing. There's more videos like this to come in the future.